Hey, it's Samantha Hartley of the Profitable Joyful Consulting Podcast. This is season 9, and we're talking about the brand called You. And I think there's nothing more that we can do as consultants and business owners than nothing better than to stay positive, to really bring positivity into our work. Now, does that have a dark side? Sometimes. So today I'm going to explore the topic of positivity with my guest, Nancy Settle-Murphy, and we're going to talk about how you can use it to be your best self at work and not veer off into the danger territory. Nancy Settle-Murphy is the president of Guided Insights, an organizational effectiveness consulting, training, and coaching firm based nearby me in the Boston area. She helps distributed teams to work more effectively by helping leaders and members alike to find new ways to build trust, cultivate healthy relationships, and collaborate more successfully across time, cultures, and distances. Virtual/hybrids, those kinds of teams are a special area of focus for her. So join me in welcoming Nancy Settle-Murphy. Nancy, welcome.
Great to be here, Samantha. Thank you for having me.
So I'm excited to talk with you about this topic. I love to open with a story of transformation. So can you tell me about one of your clients with whom you worked in this area of positivity/toxic positivity and how things went for them?
Yeah, I'd love to. And this one's actually really recent. I'm working with an organization whose very senior leaders are being propelled, kicking and screaming to move to a hybrid work model. The most senior leaders do not want it. So they recently hired me to facilitate a meeting with about 20 of their supervisors sitting around a table. And they said, we authentically want to hear all voices. So they started out basically saying that all of you, once you return to the office and your people come back, you'll love it. You'll miss it so much. We know that people won't want to go to hybrid. So that's how they opened it. And these are these powerful people.
Yeah. Okay.
And as a facilitator, I was thinking, oh yeah, that's a good way to shut down everyone around the table. But actually it just took one really courageous person to start talking. And it was a man, I'd say in his maybe mid-40s. And he said, in the last 2 years, I have reconnected with my kids in ways I never imagined. I take them to games. I help them do their homework. And I can never again go back to commuting an hour each way and missing all of that time with my kids. And then wow. I know it, so many people were almost brought to tears, but then they were brought to tears with the next person who spoke. She was, I'd say, a woman in her 50s, say she has adult kids. And she said that she missed all her kids' childhood moments because she was out working in an office, trying so hard to be a leader in this world of this industry they're in, which is real estate. And she missed everything. And so she looked around the table and she said, my hope for you is that you never miss your kids' childhoods or being a grandparent because you're tied up in an office all day. So one by one, people started to talk about at a very visceral level what it meant for them to not have to work in the office.
Amazing.
So, yeah, so that toxic positivity, that like, oh, we can do it. We don't really want to hear about your feelings, and we're saying we are. Yeah. All of that kind of suddenly melted away. And I'd say by the end of this meeting, which is about 2.5 hours, the senior leaders, I believe, and I'll see because I'm going back to work with them soon, they really felt authentically positive about the prospect of moving to a hybrid world and understood why it was possible.
Amazing. Amazing. So one thing I want to point out is I'm assuming that was a white man who spoke up first.
Yes. By the way, this is not a very diverse group. So
well, I say that because, a lot of times I feel like, nowadays we want to hear from diverse people, and that a lot of times we can, poo-poo the contributions of white men because we have heard from you. But it's probably a little easier for him to have been courageous in this situation than women who are like, I want to advocate for work from home because I want to see my family. So I really want to just highlight that white men can play a really, really good role in making things more fair and equitable for everybody, including in this situation. So in general, I think being positive is like one of the most important factors to success as an entrepreneur and as a business owner, and probably as a person. I know that I'm not typical in that I have kind of a default setting as a happy person. And believe me, I have artists and loved ones in my life who come with a more depressive default setting, which is, wonderful and, authentic and real. And in my work with consultants and business owners over the past couple of decades, I have learned that everybody doesn't do things the way I do. And a lot of what I can bring to them is to help them very often like refocus on the bright side, or refocus on what is great about this situation, or about you, or about your strengths and things like that. And I know that there is danger in perpetually doing that, especially having come off of these 2 years when like everybody was not okay. So can you share a little bit about how positivity is good for us, and then where it can kind of go to the dark side?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you touched on an important point, and that is the last 2 years, of course, have been unprecedented in terms of people feeling isolated, anxious, depressed, lacking confidence, being out of touch with who they are, with who their colleagues are, because we've all changed in the last 2 years. We're not the people we were. So I think that's a dimension we really can't ignore. I'd say in general, I'll talk about positivity first, and then where that fine line is when it veers into toxic positivity, which is really an insistent on putting a positive spin on things, even when the other person has legitimate fears or anger or sadness or grief. So being positive, and I work with you, so I think your positivity is really infectious, for which I'm very grateful. I think being positive really rubs off on people. It becomes contagious. And there's a Harvard Business Review article that just came out in the last 2 days that talked about the heliotropic effect of leaders who are positive. And the heliotropic effect, that is, where plants tend to seek the light source, so too do human beings tend to seek that light source. And that light source, in this case, being positive energy. So, and managers who score high in positive relational energy are by far the most successful leaders across any kind of organization. So it's relational energy specifically versus just positivity about the universe will provide.
Yeah.
It's something about our relationship with others. So on a leader level, that's important. As a consultant, I do a lot of strategic planning. And one of the exercises I usually use is to have everyone imagine, let's say, fast forward to 3 years from now, and your organization has achieved its nirvana, its ideal state. So picture for a moment what that looks like, and let's talk about it. Then let's talk about what are the steps we took 3 years ago when we did this session to move forward. So I think sharing a positive vision really helps galvanize people and helps them find commonalities that really grease the skids for a healthy, productive conversation.
Definitely. And then what happens when, well, for example, in your example there, what I will often do then is spend a little time anticipating obstacles. Like, what are some things that could go wrong that would prevent us from achieving that? And we're not trying to, I mean, this isn't the negative vision board. We're trying to create our downfall, but we want to, not be like all Pollyanna into the future, which I think is a little bit of a version of toxic positivity, where it's like, no, pretend everything goes great. It'll totally go great. It was on my vision board. It's like, well, let's like have some sense here.
Yeah, I just to add to that, I'm on a board of a local organization, and we have a wonderful, bold strategic plan. And in reality, we never really took the steps to agree on what it would take to get there, what resources and steps. It was a great start, but now we're finding we have to go back in time and say, okay, how do we make this real? Because we never really talked about that.
Interesting. So like, oops, an important piece of this is like actually making that happen. So I first heard, I think, about toxic positivity in, I think it was Barbara Ehrenreich, who wrote a book about how she got cancer. And then she was around all of these like I'm going to call out my own, new age woo-woo people, because I'm totally one of them. When those people got around her, they were like, you should, focus on the positive, and that you'll be cured by your own positive thoughts, and like, don't be negative. And where have you been spending time in negativity and things like that? And I think the you shouldn't feel this way is kind of the bottom line of toxic positivity when I have seen it and experienced it, as opposed to this should not have happened to you. It's you should not feel this way. You should feel, if you feel more positive, then things will go better for you. So that, I think, is kind of aggressive and specifically toxic.
Yes, and in a virtual world, it's, first of all, it's harder to assess. Let's say if you put on kind of a happy face on the Zoom meetings, I don't have those subtle nuances in your pixelated image that tell me that you're really suffering, or there's something wrong, or you're not feeling like your usual self. So a lot of times I don't even know what's going on for the other person. But if I do detect it, it's hard, especially if we're, let's say we're not really close, we're colleagues. It can be pretty intrusive for me to circle back to you and say, Samantha, I noticed your voice wasn't your usual self. Is there something going on? And that's fine to do in general, but I think it's important to understand what our relationship is and how the other person might receive that.
Interesting. I know during the pandemic, it became more common to ask, like, how are you doing? And like really mean it, as opposed to like, fine, fine, fine. What is I mean, I loved how you phrased what you said. Like, what's a way to, I guess, create a little more trust so that that question is received positively, as opposed to invasively?
That's a great question. I'd say one thing is one way to create trust, and one of the best ways, is to be vulnerable yourself. So I might say, gee, I've noticed that a few of us, the voices seem lower, or if I address you directly later, I might say, Samantha, I noticed this. Here's how I've been feeling, and I've been really wanting to share this with someone. So I think to reveal how you're feeling is an important way to open up the doors for others to admit how they're feeling. Now, if how I'm feeling is really positive and really happy, I probably wouldn't start that way. But that's one of the best ways, I think, to open the doors.
To kind of identify with how they're feeling and share how I'm feeling that way.
Or maybe not feeling that way, because I don't know how you're feeling yet, but maybe I've been feeling isolated. I've been feeling not as optimistic as usual, or however you're feeling. So be authentic about it, but to reveal how you're feeling, I think, is a good first step.
I love that. What comes to mind for me is you are in my group coaching program, and I once was in a group coaching program that had a thing that I really did not like, which was this kind of aggressive positivity, to the point that in the little community, a Facebook group that we had there, if anybody posted anything negative, it was immediately deleted. And if anybody brought up anything that wasn't working for them in group coaching calls, everybody that was kind of shut down rapidly. Now, what I understand from them was, I'm not saying this is right. I'm saying I get what they were trying to do. They felt like negativity caused a negative spiral. And if something wasn't working for one person, a lot of people for whom that wasn't working would glom onto that. And there would be this, cancerous mass in the middle of the room. People are as mature as they are. And I think the emotional maturity level of the leaders of that group was not high. And so I don't think they handled that well. I'm specifically bringing this up because this can happen with our clients as well. We can see that there's, everybody's gung-ho, but somebody isn't. And then other people, as the process goes on, and then other people begin to turn against the process too. There has to be a more positive way to handle, or effective way to handle dissenting voices or a piece of negativity, especially when it is authentically like, I'm down, I'm scared, this isn't working for me, I don't know what to do. Can you help us with that?
Well, yeah, you raised a lot of good points. First of all, I think it's critical that within a given team or any relationship, that there's some psychological safety established that tells me, that demonstrates to me that it is safe to be me. that it is safe to say how I'm feeling, and very important, what I need. Because I can talk about how I'm feeling, but it could be really hard for me to give the ask. So I think that's really critical. And to some degree, that comes from creating team principles about, for example, one of my clients had one that they felt their most important principle of all had to do with asking for and offering help in team meetings and other ways, because it was so hard for them to do that, especially working as a distributed team. So I think it's talking through what our principles are about that, and to model, either if I'm the team leader or a colleague, to model the kind of behavior, that kind of safety, to signal that we don't just say this is a safe place, but we really mean this is a safe place. And I'll start off saying, here's what I'm thinking, here's what I'm feeling.
Here's what I need help with.
And here's what I need from myself. Here's where I'm struggling as a leader. And here's what I need from you. And what can I do for you? Mm-hmm. That's one of the most powerful conversations a team can have. And I think it should be had every time they meet. At least allocate some space for that.
I love that. I'm thinking, as we're talking about having this conversation within oneself. So if I'm trying to be positive and putting on a happy face, either as a leader of a team or a leader of my own business, but I'm having some persistent negative thoughts or concerns or worries, what I find is shouting down that voice inside of myself also isn't always effective. So what's a way that we can turn legitimate, authentic feelings of negativity into something that's more positive?
Well, I like to write things down. I'm a writer, so I like to write down what is my biggest fear and how realistic is that, and what causes fear. So I like to analyze myself. Mm-hmm. And usually I talk myself into remembering that something like 95% of the things we fear never come to fruition. So just knock it off. Uh-huh. So that's one thing I do, some self-talk. I also will reach out to a trusted colleague and usually a fellow consulting business owner, because I think we have so many things in common and perhaps some of the same fears. And I'll say, here's what I'm thinking about. What are some ways I can overcome this? Or how are you addressing this? Or the most powerful thing to me is, can we brainstorm together? What are some obstacles I can remove? Because I find that brainstorming with an accountability partner is one of the most powerful things I can do. Because I need to move forward. I need to get out of that space.
I think you've just said a key thing there, which is I need to move forward, because I know I'm thinking specifically of I had a client tell me that she had to leave the BNI. This is a networking organization that she was in because I think it's BCM, every session there just turned into a bitch, complain, and moan session about how, the economy's bad and nobody's buying and this, like, it's easy for us all to find reasons why we're failing, if we're failing, why things aren't working. How come that isn't authentic?
How come that, which isn't authentic?
Why? So what's wrong with a BCM session over here as opposed to, brainstorming with your friend about how things aren't quite working for you, and not getting toxically imposed positivity upon yourself?
Well, I think in the description you gave for the BNI or whatever organization, mm-hmm. where people heap complaint and whine, and that really fuels the fire, mm-hmm. and it snowballs, and that becomes contagious. So I would never want to be associated with a group like that. I want to be with someone who understands, perhaps has compassion for what I'm going through, and understands and appreciates and acknowledges my fears or concerns as legit, and then will work with me to propel myself ahead. I think too often when we get in a negative mindset, we are stuck and we can't move ahead. And sometimes we need help outside of ourselves. And it might be going for a walk, playing fetch with my dog. And I think, everything's right with the world. Now, I just let all that go. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to carry that with me when I come back to sit at my desk.
Well, I really like that, the idea of, in the moment, what can I do to reset myself? I think we have to I care about certain people. I feel like this happens with people's family of origin or other groups of friends that they can't quite escape from. To me, I'm like, if you have people in your life who are negative, for me, I'm totally willing to cut them off. Now, there's a line, right? Because I want to be around positive and growth oriented people. That's why I highlighted what you said earlier. Like, I want to grow, and so I don't want to be in this place. So I do try to cut off people who are negative. And I also know sometimes that's someone's spouse and they like don't choose to cut that person off, or their kids or whatever. So I understand that is without limits. In general, to the extent you have choice for this, seek the positive environments that that do fuel you and that do help you move forward, and be alert to those, I think, negative influences, or where it wants to smash down any authenticity. What I like that you've brought up are the tools that we can use in an everyday situation to feel better when we're having a rough day. I call it somebody has slashed my tires. Like, sometimes I'll be sitting and I'll be like, what, hold on. And then I have to do a little rewind of like, what happened? Something has upset me. What happened? And so I'll trace that down and kind of see what that is, but then I can do something about it. So you talked about journaling, talking it through with a friend, playing fetch with a dog. I like, if it's a completely tragic day, then I will just go take a nap and start this whole day over. I think hug the cat, go do something else. I have said before in the past that I am not above going and getting some sugar, whether it's cookies or something like that, and being like, right now I am intentionally emotionally eating, and I am forgiving myself for that. So I think we can have an array of tools that we can use in those situations. Now, what would you say they have in organizations, whether remote or in person, that they can use to help when there is a negative, like a small negative thing that's happened? Like, I don't know, say a customer was upset and we need to pull everybody out of the dive, or like we're just in a tough time period right now.
Well, I think if for teams that have same time meetings that actually meet together, whether they're virtual, face-to-face, or hybrid, which is becoming more common, I think.
Yeah.
It's to allocate some space for, I think of it as headlights and highlights. So what have been my achievements this week, which helps me because you do that in our group. What are our wins? So what are our achievements for last week? So maybe ask each person to say a couple. And then what are my headlights? What's coming up? What do I need help with? What do I have questions about? So to create that space and make it a regular part of your team meeting to do that, I think that's one. Another is many teams, and most I work with, use some kind of asynchronous communication channel, whether it's Slack, whether it's Trello, whatever. And that can often be a great way to have a continuing conversation throughout the day. And some of my clients create separate threads, one for more social, one for more specific project related, maybe something else. So I think it's creating opportunities for conversations that aren't necessarily synchronized and planned and orchestrated like a team meeting has to be. Because I think that's what's really missing in today's workplace. It's those connections that we think of as weak ties or weak connections, where they're people we used to see every day. Maybe they're on another team, but we don't really have a legit reason to contact them. So it's a way to open those doors and create those pathways, regardless of who's in the office that day or whether anyone's in the office that day.
It's the water cooler moments that we miss.
Yeah. And they can be created. And I think that's where a lot of these conversations used to take place.
Yeah, I love that idea. And I'm thinking of things I can do with my own team because I like them. And we've only had 1 or 2 meetings where we saw each other in real time. And mostly we all work entirely asynchronously, which I love. That really works for me. And I think it works for us as teams. But I do think it's funner when we find ways to come together and just, make a more cohesive, connected organization. So I know that this hybrid stuff is a big trend. I'm wondering what other trends you see just in the area of positivity. Are we, that Harvard Business Review article from yesterday is already kind of boosting my idea that it helps us to be more positive. do you see that being adapted more often, and how committed are organizations to doing that?
Well, right. First of all, I think a lot of organizations are what I call in the weeds. They are struggling with simply moving, and it's nothing simple about it, but moving to a hybrid model, those that are. So I think, honestly, I think many of them haven't thought about that yet, because they're doing everything they can just to create hybrid work policies that are considered fair, to make sure they maintain an equitable playing field, et cetera. I do think, however, many organizations recognize that during the last 2 years, many people have become profoundly depressed, incredibly stressed, feeling lost, not just because they've been disconnected from their teammates and their workmates, but they've been disconnected from a lot of people in their lives. So I do think that there will be a recognition, and a greater recognition, of the need to help uplift people, whether they're in the office or outside of the office, once if they stabilize their new model. But I think right now, a lot of them are just struggling to figure out what that is.
Yeah. It says to me what opportunities we have as leaders to model this for those who are out there. And I think modeling positivity in general, and also compassionate positivity of like, I can invite you to be with me. And when people, like, you mentioned earlier being stuck, and I feel like, sometimes people get stuck. And sometimes people get stuck for a long, long time. And can we be with them? And for me, as a person who, as I said, I like default to positive, when people around me are stuck for a really long time, it's been a real journey for me to be able to do this. But a lot of times I can just sit with them now. And, I'm a fixer, so I want to fix people, and I have let a lot of those behaviors go. So I can just say, I'm here with you. I'll just be with you. If you need something, that's fine. But I just want you to know that I'm here with you. And I wonder if that is the opportunity as leaders for us to just, model being positive, but also share vulnerably what else is going on with us, and extend compassion towards those who are not okay.
I think that's a great point. One is, I think, just saying, I'm here for you. I acknowledge whether it's feelings of frustration, feeling inadequate, whatever you're feeling, they're real. And I'm not going to try to talk you out of it with some positive vibes. But I do want you to know that I'm here with you. And and I'm ready, I think you said to go along, I'm ready to go along on this journey with you whenever you're ready to move ahead. But I understand right now you're finding that difficult. Because I know some people who are so stuck, they could never listen to any positive advice or want any guidance. All they want to do is for someone to hear them and to recognize that they're hurting. So I think sometimes people need a multi-step process to get out of the hole that, I don't want to say they've dug, but that has been dug by someone, whether it's themselves or circumstances, and really want to get out. But not everyone is in a place where they can actually take those steps. And sometimes I think giving all this well-meaning, positive, happy advice can actually send someone further down into that hole.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's like, you're wrong where you are, and you need to be different. And I don't think that advice is ever helpful. So it's really been great just to talk this through with you, Nancy. I want to share with our listeners that you have such thought leadership in your LinkedIn posts. So I definitely think they should connect with you on LinkedIn, and on your blog. Nancy writes amazingly thoughtful articles on her blog and in her newsletter. So she's definitely a person to connect with in this area. And you are also, I wanted to write this down because you have programs on maintaining a more equitable workplace in a hybrid virtual world, and on unconscious bias. So you are really drawn to like all of the hard stuff where that is. What is it about you that makes that an area of interest and also skill for you?
Well, I've been a facilitator, a professional facilitator for probably 30 years. I'm in the middle of 7 children, so I was naturally a facilitator for much of my life.
There's your
growing
answer.
up. And I have lived I've lived in Hong Kong for a short time and traveled very frequently to especially countries in Asia and in Europe. And what I kept seeing are the assumptions we make about each other in the absence of really talking through what are our cultural differences, what are our norms. So that I think influenced me, my work as a facilitator. And then the more I get in deep into the world of unconscious bias and the effect that has on me as a person, on our communities, and on our organizations, I'm seeing this move to hybrid, this move to a new work model, which honestly hasn't been this profound for probably 100 years. We have an opportunity as organizations to really examine all of the areas where we don't have a level playing field. Look at all the groups of people who are afforded certain opportunities and others who aren't, and take a look at this move to hybrid as a chance to identify those areas and then to address them. Mm-hmm. So I think that kind of is almost like the nexus of the work I'm doing. It's a move to hybrid, and then the seeing all the disconnects and the lack of equity. This is a time we can really do something about it if we're resolved to do it.
Yeah, it reminds me of, I was in Eastern Europe when the Soviet Union fell, and they redid all of their banking systems. And because they had antiquated banking systems for, 70 years, they were able to jump right to the end of the line and when they did bring in banking systems, they were the most innovative ever. Whereas people who had legacy systems like Great Britain, they were like, we cannot do that because we have all of this stuff already in place. And I think, as you're saying, it's an historic opportunity for us to say, if we could redo work completely, like, how would we do that? And the companies that are thinking about doing that and are actually getting out in front of this and are open and being like, listen, things are changing. We need to make peace with it. Let's do something. I think they're going to be the ones who are ahead of the game. So you do help your clients to do that kind of thing. Where can we find out more about you, your LinkedIn, and where else?
guidedinsights.com. That's my website. And on any page, you can sign up for my newsletter or sign up to have a quick chat. And I'm on Twitter under @nsettlemurphy. And then a phone call. And my info is on my website. I love when the phone rings unexpectedly, or when someone sends me an email and say, hey, do you have 15 minutes to talk? I love helping people solve problems.
Awesome. Well, and I love when people are inviting in the ways that you are and doing just amazing work in the world. So we will share all of your contact information in the show notes. And I definitely invite everyone to follow you on LinkedIn, because your posts are definitely fire emoji. So thank you so much for this conversation. I've learned a lot, and I think it's just so important right now to keep these issues top of mind. And I hope our listeners will also have benefited from it.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I really feel it's been a real honor.
Fabulous. And with that, Nancy and I are wishing you a profitable and joyful consulting business. Thanks for watching. I'd appreciate if you'd like this episode, and if you enjoyed the show, why not subscribe? Be sure to click the bell to get notified when new episodes drop.